it's been around for GA4 has been around for about 2 years now. The sunsetting announcement was quite significant, and it was a rapid announcement that most people didn't see coming. So my question to all of you on this first question is, in your opinion, what do you think the impact of this change will mean for the digital marketing industry, particularly thinking about things like benefits and challenges? So first, if we could go to you, Selena.
Yeah, so I suppose one of the massive changes with the rollout of GA4 is it's event-based, not session-based, which means that essentially Google can kind of stitch the consumer journey, which means as marketing people, when we are formulating strategies, it's much more about who the consumer is and the journey that we're actually collecting data on and providing to users. So from a beneficial point of view, any kind of organization that does plan out very well around a user-centric strategy will really win from this, and having the data there to kind of validate and optimize accordingly. I suppose for the challenges, there's a component within GA4, which is predictive analytics. So this will take the data that you have and will forecast performance moving forward from there. And for any kind of middle level marketers, if you have anyone jumping in and actually looking at your account itself, there could almost be, I suppose, opportunities to lead, I guess, expectations incorrectly. Benoit and I, we've looked at a couple of accounts ourselves, and we've actually found they're not super accurate in terms of the results is actually forecasting and predicting. So that's probably one of the challenges of, I guess, stakeholder management internally, is the data is there, but is it accurate? That's kind of a question that's yet to be confirmed. And I suppose there's also a bit of a mindset change for digital marketers in general. So if we think about SEO specifically, it's needing SEOs to look further than base level UX experiences, because again, it is about the user itself. So it's thinking about, how do we keep users engaged with our content? How do we get them clicking through? And that almost means that we need to work closer from a design point of view, a CRO point of view. And so the mindset goes away from being siloed to much more, how do we all collaborate together to provide the best experience?
Excellent, some great points. Thanks, Selena. And Ben, same question.
To add on the top of the benefit that Selena was just saying, on the fact that it's a user-centric, I like the fact that it's a holistic view now. So we have the full visibility for activity across website and apps. And I think that's a major step for analytics, especially for companies that have apps, obviously. But it also works better with web apps. So I like this one. And then the second benefit I see in GA4, I think it's the accessibility to raw data. So it used to be a paid feature just for the GA360 clients, but now you have access to the raw data through BigQuery with the native integration, which means that then you have all those new possibility of combining your data with first-party data like your CRM, transactional data, with third-party data, and go much further and deeper into the understanding your user. You could use other Google platform products, and I think I'm going to go more into detail of all the possibilities there. But I think having that access to raw data is, for the free user, is a major benefit. Then in terms of challenges, I think the reporting is going to be the main challenge for everyone. Like you were mentioning before, Paul, the number of reports that are built in are much less than it used to. So it means that people will have to build their own dashboards and reports, which also require people to understand what they are looking for in terms of metrics and dimensions. So be much closer to how it's structured, how the events are named, how the parameters are named, how the whole tool works. And the second main challenge will be around the historical data. So for all those companies that want to save the data, and then how they're going to combine that with the new GA4 data and see on how they can report and see comparing 2018 performance with this year, for instance. That's going to be a challenge.
Thanks, Ben. There's some good points there. I think some of the things you mentioned, we're going to start unpacking some of those a bit further into the panel as well. So thanks for that. And Alan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's in a similar vein to both Selena and Ben. You know, it's going to cause the industry to rethink the way that data is captured about customer. As we move away from the visitor-visit paradigm to an event-based model, it's going to allow you to leverage more than just website and mobile behaviors. It's really going to create an opportunity, which I think is underestimated here, but it's going to create an opportunity to bring all sources of customer data. That'll come even from your back office systems, sales transactions, product reviews, and a bunch of other offline conversions are going to be able to come into GA4, even data from your warehouse or your advanced analytics capability. All of this can be brought into the mix. And so what it equates to is having a more complete, sophisticated, and unified view of the customer. It'll shift the mindset for measurement, I think, for digital and marketing spend and performance, because as was mentioned, they're going to see the bigger picture. Some of the challenges around that is it's coming hard and fast. We know that there isn't an out-of-the-box lift and shift from Universal Analytics into GA4. And because of the shift in focus in the way you have to define your own events about your customers, it's really going to force the industry to be much more data-driven. They're not just going to drop a library and expect it to capture everything. You have to define those events. And so many, I think a challenge would be that many will be caught out trying to recreate the world of Universal Analytics in GA4 and miss an immense opportunity to redefine their approach and leverage more of their customer data.
Great. Thank you, Alan. That's a great answer. So we're going to get a bit more into the aspect of change here, because obviously this is a significant change for a lot of people, and change is never easy. So looking at forums, it looks like there's a lot of discussion about missing features, reports, things that people liked in the previous tool that aren't being carried across. And that's even prompted some people to ask if this tool is even ready for use. So that's what I really want to understand from you guys today. So I'm going to ask this question for Ben first, and the question is, from your perspective, what can users expect from the platform? So what are the features that are, and the reports that are included, the key ones, and then what are some of the features or reports that may be missing?
So in terms of important new features, and it goes along the fact that the tool is now user-centric, there is this possibility of changing the attribution model across all the reports at any time. So Universal Analytics used to be just the last non-direct click. Right now we can adapt and change that, and that would apply across all the reports. And I think it's a major progress on that, but it will also require people to understand on how their users behave on the website and what leads to the conversion, so they can select the right attribution model. Then the other benefit, important feature is this, even though there are less reports within the interface, there is this feature which is the Explore reports that you can build. That used to be the advanced analysis tool for just 360. So once again, it's a feature that used to be for paid clients. Now anyone has access to it, where it's sort of a drag and drop, and you can build a very powerful visualization like funnels, like behavior flow and things like this quite fast, but it will require people to know what they're after and how to do it. So these analytics skills will be a bit more required, yet the possibilities are greater. But then in terms of missing reports, there are lots missing. And when you go into the tool, you will feel like a lot is missing, but since you can build everything yourself, then it's sort of it's a bad for good. But yeah, if you're after conversion rates, it doesn't exist in GA4 unless you create it. That's the sort of thing that you will have to rethink.
Okay, thanks, Ben. And Selena, same question. So from your perspective, what can users expect from the platform?
There's there's two pretty powerful reports that is quite different with GA4. So the first one is the user lifetime report. So this essentially creates a visualization of identifying what sources are driving the greatest lifetime value from a consumer. And so that's quite cool because, first of all, it's not kind of isolated month by month, which we would have seen quite typically from a reporting point of view from Analytics Universal. But it also kind of really helps marketing managers and digital marketers in general when it comes to media mix modeling and trying to figure out what's the right combination of different channels and sources to actually drive the greatest kind of user path and lifetime value. So that one's really cool. And the other one is the lifecycle reports. So this essentially answers how a user enters the conversion funnel and how they interact within that funnel. So, for CRO specialists and those kind of things is, as marketers, we push all the traffic to the site and hopefully the site's doing what it needs to. But there's also the component of not just the site and the content and design. It's also what's the conversion, experience in that space and how to optimize further for that. So there's some really cool reports that stand out to me personally. For missing features, obviously Benoit's kind of touched on it. There's a lot missing in general. There's two specific ones that I found quite interesting. So the first is bounce rate. I know it's just quite a small metric, but this has been a really good tool in the past when it is kind of, understand what pages are lacking, user experience in a positive way, because you can kind of figure out where we need to optimize and focus our efforts on to kind of make sure we're capturing and saving those people to stay on the site. And the other one is views as well. Like I know a lot of businesses that we work with, views have been fantastic for being able to pull through reports to identify traffic that's not internal traffic and those kind of things. So it's a bit of a shame that one's gone.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, Selena. So the dynamics of the marketing team with analytics team is something that's always been quite an interesting dynamic, and we know that most businesses are starting to increase the size of their teams of analysts. So I've got some questions about where this tool is positioned. Okay, so from my perspective, that Google Analytics has always been positioned as a entry-level analytics tool. It was just easy to use, easy to adopt, that low barrier of entry, quick learning curve to get using it. So GA4 is more advanced, and it appears to be moving more into the enterprise analytics space. So I've got a few questions here. The first is, what do you think the change means for the future of the relationship between the marketing team or the marketer and the analytics team? So do you think analytics will be more in the hands of marketers and they will do more or less analysis? And then do you think analytics is going to become, or analytics capability is going to become a mandatory digital marketing skill? So Alan, I want to go to you first on that one.
Yeah, thanks. Will they do more analysis? Look, I've always talked about the wall that separates the data whisperers, me and my team, the people that do data analytics, BI, who speak data, and the data dreamers, marketers, digital, customer service that dream of using data to better understand their customers, the business, and deliver continuous improvements to operations and CX. In my line of work, we're all about proposing solutions to break down that wall so that the data whisperers and the dreamers can collaborate better, surfacing opportunities and actionable insight fluidly across the business. And I think that GA4 is an important step in that right direction. Once established with the right level of data, GA4 will absolutely lift marketing's access to rich data and insight, and provide greater self-serve capability to perform their own analysis. So yes, marketers will be working day-to-day in a far more data-driven platform, doing a lot more sophisticated analysis. On the advanced analytics side, I'd say that the level of analysis won't quite be what we label advanced analytics. you know, the built-in AI might take some of that initial heavy lifting and surface useful, practical insights for the marketer. The marketer will need to have an appreciation and an understanding of what the data is telling them so that they can effectively take action. But on the advanced analytics side, which we could say lives in the realm of a data scientist, you know, I'd suggest that this won't be a mandatory skill for marketing. GA4 will bring rich, granular data to the data scientist via GCP, and we're going to talk about that later, who can then surface that insight back to marketing in a range of ways to support their analysis, reporting, and decisioning. So bottom line, in my mind, GA4 is working its way to break down the wall that I mentioned, creating greater collaboration around data between marketing and analytics and BI teams.
Great, thank you, Alan. And Ben, what's your view on that one?
So the marketers will have to do more or less analysis. I think they will have to rethink the way they are doing analysis. So it's not that they will have to do more or less. It's just that they will have maybe to rely more on their BI team for more advanced one. But they also have to re-educate themselves. And I think that's a big part of, we all had like a understanding and even used universal analytics for years. So that shift will require people to do that extra step of understanding, because it's a completely different tool. So we'll have to make that extra effort first. And then in terms of advanced analytics, as in, is it a required skill for marketers? I don't think, but they will have to think more of data and be closer to what are the sort of questions they want to answer and how they're going to action the data. So for me, it's actually going in the right direction of pushing people to be more data driven and figuring out more what they're really after and how they're going to use, rather than before it was sort of automatically served and people were just like not processing really the data. So it pushed people to do that extra step of analysis, I think.
Great, thank you, Ben. And the second part to this question is where you see the biggest skill gaps in the companies that you work with, and what are your recommendations for closing the gaps? So just one answer on this, actually, Alan, would be great for your answer on this.
Yeah, sure. The biggest skills gap generally is data proficiency across the business. That is, having an appreciation of and practical skills in what customer data is available, what it means, and applicable use cases for that data, and then knowing when and how to use it to delivering meaningful value across the business. So as GA4 moves away from well-known, the well-known prescribed data model to more of an open model that accepts any data that you define and give structure to, it's going to be critically important that organizations invest in uplifting data proficiency. And so the recommendation here, make sure, one, that there are clear owners of data. Who's in charge of data at every level of the organization, whether it lives in GA4 or in BigQuery or right back in the systems it originates. There needs to be a go-to person. You need to be able to tap on that person's shoulder and drive an understanding of data across the business. Make data as intuitive as possible, and accessible as possible, so that it can be correctly interpreted by anyone. I think to create data citizens, and a data-driven culture, it's really going to come down to encouraging every decision to be based on a story told around data, so that, in the end, it's going to be necessary, I think, to employ skilled data analysts and engineers, and probably embed them within those business units to work closely with the business to drive up appreciation and adoption of a data mindset.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Alan. So next question is really around performance reporting. This is one of the main things that we all use Google Analytics for. Is it's the first place we go when we want to think about reviewing the performance of a channel or a campaign. So Selena, you mentioned earlier, I think it was you that mentioned the attribution model changing. So will the default attribution change impact how advertisers report on performance, and are there going to be winners and losers in that scenario?
Yeah, it's a massive change, especially for brands like a lot of our clients who use analytics as their kind of one source of truth. So the default attribution, for anyone who's not familiar with it, is moving to data-driven attribution. So this has been out for quite a few years now. And I remember when it was first rolled out, it was only really applicable to really large businesses because it needed minimum amount of traffic and conversions and those kind of things, because it is a machine learning algorithm, which essentially takes your historical performance and kind of tries to figure out, based on the consumer, how they've interacted with your brand, and each touch point where it should value accordingly the conversion value of a single path. So this is really good if we're thinking about, the winners and the losers. Really good for large brands who have so much data to kind of feed into the machine, so it can accurately start to attribute accordingly. For any businesses that have low volume, or obviously if it hasn't been configured correctly, they are at risk of losing because of that, because the machine is only so good as the data it receives. Thankfully, though, you do have the change that Benoit mentioned before, where you can change the default, whereas universal we couldn't. So I suppose for businesses, when it does come to reporting performance, is going to be quite a big change if you're not on top of that. A lot of businesses are still doing last non-direct as Universal's set to. So if you go from reporting on Universal to GA4, you're going to have completely different figures and completely different stats. And there might be a fair bit of chaos in that space. So try to figure out how you're reporting now. Does that actually answer the questions that you need to within the business, and evaluate, okay, is it time to start looking at different models, especially if you are the larger brands?
Great, thank you very much. And same question for you, Alan. Oh no, actually slightly different question for you, Alan. I wanted to know that about the source of truth. So do you think that this change may result in a different platform being the source of truth? So whether it's shifting from GA to CRM or the marketing automation tool, what's your view on that?
This is the age-old question, where is the source of truth? You see, CRM, marketing automation, customer service, e-commerce, web, mobile, they all have their own source of truth within their specific context. Universal Analytics played the role primarily of holding the source of truth for digital tracked behaviors. It was easily accessible. It answered point questions about digital experience and performance, but it was missing all the other data marketing would like to know about customer. Servian's answer to source of truth has been to bring the data together, by helping businesses build data warehouses or data lakes, and present that view through reports and visualizations and dashboards. I think instead of source of truth, perhaps I'd invite everyone to consider reframing it as trusted view. Now that GA4 is being opened up and capable of storing data about the customer from any channel or any system, all of a sudden we're starting to centralize a highly accessible customer view, which is much broader than just digital or a digital or a marketing view. Add to this the underlying Google BigQuery database, which could be an organization's data warehouse or data lake if they wanted, and is capable of holding every single data point about the systems in an organization. Now we're talking two birds, one stone. With GA4, you've now empowered the data analytics team to support the marketing teams by being able to blend all that digital customer data and enterprise data to generate deep insights and to continuously enrich and serve up a trusted view back into GA for self-service analytics and omni-channel activation.
Great. Thank you, Alan. That's a really interesting concept there of the trusted view. So, Benoit, we have discussed that this is a more complex tool to use out of the box. It requires a bit more knowledge. Do you think that the complexity has a potential to push marketers away from this tool?
Yes, short answer is yes. I do think that because of this complexity, a lot of people will just go away and consider GA4 more as a data collector sort of tool rather than reporting tool. But it will also force people to get closer to their data, which is actually the most important part of it. And then it will require them to build dashboards and reports, maybe in Data Studio or any BI tool externally, but they will get much closer to their own data. And like Alan was just referring before, we need people to own the data at every single level. And I think by limiting those built-in reports and by forcing people to get closer to that, we will make people owning their data. So it's a good a good thing to happen.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ben. So I want to ask a question now around data integration, because this for me is one of the most exciting things about this change. I think a few people have already mentioned it. I think, well, I think all of you have mentioned it at some point, data integration. That is a real biggie for us because GA4 includes native integration with BigQuery. Hopefully everyone's heard of BigQuery, but essentially it's a data warehousing solution that's part of the GCP, the Google Cloud Platform. So this seems like an important strategic change, which could put Google at the heart of a company's data strategy. And I haven't really read much about this in the industry press or anything. So I think there's a lot of value that can be added here. So Alan, I'd like to get your view. Your company, you and your company have the best view on GCP. So I'm going to break this down into 3 questions, if you don't mind. The first is, how do you see GA4 integrating into the wider data strategy piece?
Yeah, you know, GA4 starts you off on this GCP journey by, as you said, streaming all that raw, rich, granular customer data, unsampled, by the way, into your Google BigQuery, which alone as a technology already provides instant access to a common interface for all data analysts and engineers, if you've got them in the team, to be able to wrangle data. You know, it's backed by auto-scaling compute and infinite storage and embedded machine learning and programming and visualization capability. So in that light, your data strategy is already off to a great start, but that's really just the beginning. You know, an organization's data strategy ought to outline a roadmap of enablement for that includes, you know, identifying where's your data, how do you store it, how do you provision it, how do you process it, how do you govern it. And with Google Cloud, well, you're already working with one of the world's leading cloud and data infrastructure providers. They've got over 100 services to support all the capabilities you may require. So for instance, if your data strategy outlines initiatives to lift and shift or even completely re-architect your core business systems and applications in the cloud, well, Google's got you covered. You have virtually infinite scalable compute. You've got virtualization, you've got containers, serverless, API management, networking, identity management, monitoring, DevOps, security, right? You've got the lot. If you're looking to host and manage your data, well, Google provides a number of specialized cost and performance optimized services for a range of use cases, including integration services, transformation, orchestration, storage for housing files and application data. You've got databases of all kinds. BigQuery is only one of them, but you've got databases for transactional and analytical processing. You've got message queues, data governance services. Really, the list goes on. And then if you're looking for more advanced analytics using artificial intelligence and machine learning, again, you've got a huge range of options to choose from pre-built AI APIs to perform things like natural language processing, vision, voice, video, translation services, recommendations. And if that's not enough and you want customizability, you've got things like AutoML, where you've got an out-of-the-box configurable model that you can train for your specific needs. You've even got all the way through to fully managed platforms for machine learning to build, train, and host your own custom models. So most of these services, they're offered under a consumption model, and therefore you can start small and scale as you see value. So it is a fantastic step in the right direction for your data strategy.
Excellent, thank you very much. And then from the perspective of making the best use, what can companies do to make full use of GCP, Google Cloud Platform integrations?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, we discussed earlier that you may find limitations. So, Ben, and we talked about things like the things you want to do with data or how it's captured. Perhaps it was around reporting or advanced analytics. So, as you start to hit the limits of GA4, I'd suggest getting familiar first with what BigQuery can do for you out of the box, because you'll have that immediately with GA4. And then start familiarizing yourself with the rest of the cloud services catalog. I mean, 100 services, there are a ton of them. There are a ton of resources also available to help you understand what each of those services bring to the table. There are also really well-documented, publicly available recipes and solution architecture templates that are designed to help you get started across different verticals, domains, industries, and use cases. Your data strategy ought to set out a bunch of specific use cases for your data across the business. So perhaps from there, I'd start to line up, how do each of these GCP services, how are they designed to specifically provide the capability you require for that use case? This is a service that Servium provides. I mean, we help organizations navigate and architect solutions to leverage the full power of GCP.
Excellent. Thank you. And then based on your experience of implementing those data solutions, what challenges should companies look out for?
The challenges, yeah. You can practically build anything in GCP, but of course, not all designs are created equal, and you can absolutely go to town, spin up and run services, scale them, process heaps of data, and you will rack up an enormous bill. So it's super important that the solution you build is well architected. That is, first, it's secure, and then it can maximize the use of the services for the purposes they were built, while still being highly optimized from a performance and cost perspective to achieve the desired capabilities. And, we've helped many organizations embrace the power of GCP, be it migrations from on-premise to cloud or cloud to cloud migrations, maybe hybrid multi-cloud solutions, or maybe greenfield, you're completely engineering a brand new product and solution that was built native for cloud. Don't underestimate the importance and value of having a sound solution architecture. Invest actually in bringing experts to support you in designing your solution.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Really thorough answer there, Alan. So I won't go to the other two panelists on that particular topic. So the next topic I really wanted to discuss is privacy. Privacy is everywhere. It's not going away anytime soon. In fact, it's probably going to get, well, we know it's going to get more important as we move over the next couple of years. So Selena, I'd like to ask you, how does Google Analytics 4 fit with a privacy-first digital marketing future?
Well, the benefit to GA4 is the machine learning is actually stitching user paths together, which gives us as marketing specialists or whoever we are, we're well equipped once the cookies are actually retired, which is really good because I think it was pretty bleak there for a little while. But there still is a need for businesses to really start thinking, we still require first party data and stuff like that, but this is kind of the solution for that issue at this point. And it really kind of puts the businesses in a position where they get the opportunity, just like Alan's spoken about and Benoit, where they can really kind of own the data and own really understanding who their consumers are. So from a marketing point of view, there's thankfully minimal I suppose, changes in the way that we actually import and those kind of things, the different audiences, but the way the definitions are set up are based on who your audience is will be very different to what we have now access to with universal analytics, purely because the way it collects data, as we've discussed, it's session-based in UA versus now it's event-based. So all of your definitions of who your audience is will need to change essentially. But no, I'm really excited about this. I've done a couple of talks on it already about cookies, so I'm happy to see this change come through.
Ooh, might be on mute.
Oh, sorry about that. I was on mute. Classic Zoom fail there. So same question to you, Alan.
Yeah, cool. Look, the noose really is tightening on privacy controls. We all know this. The cookie apocalypse is challenging. I think I read an article that said 85% of cookie-based anonymous digital tracking, advertising, and marketing solutions in the market, this change is going to render them useless over the next few years, which is really scary for that industry. Google trialed a number of things in this privacy domain. They trialed federated learning of cohorts, FLoC. You might have heard that. Which supposedly enabled interest-based advertising on the web without letting advertisers know your identity. Sadly, only Google Chrome intended to adopt that standard. No other browser was going to do it, so they abandoned it. They tried something else. They're exploring replacing it with another standard called Topics, where your browser may track and learn about interests over a shorter period of time, and then the browser provider can host an API that ad servers can consume to understand the interests of that browser at that point in time. Again, it's intended to completely hide the user's identity while giving them greater control over ads, and they could even turn that off completely. The bottom line is, this new world will mean that you're going to struggle to link interests and behaviors of users with your actual customers. And what that really translates to is that primary first-party data, that is the data you own in your own systems about your customers, is going to become the most important asset to digital and marketing. And one of the greatest benefits I see with GA4 is that it lets you take full advantage of your first-party data. By enabling you to pipe all that rich customer events from your systems straight into your customer view from across a broad, for you to use across a broad range of Google Marketing Platform services like Google Ads, Display, Video 360, Optimize, etc. And even to activate into other channels like GCP services like Looker, which I didn't mention before. So because GA4 is working with your first-party data, which you can govern and control, I think it's a great fit in a privacy-first digital marketing future.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Alan. So we're getting close to the end now. So if you do have questions, please start putting them into the message channel. I've seen a few popping up already. For this next question, I'm only going to ask one person actually, just because of timings. So this is about timeline. And as I mentioned earlier, we've got approximately 12 months before UA stops processing data. So my question is to you, Ben. I think you're probably the closest to this question is, can you talk us through the key steps and considerations that Google Analytics users should do to get ready for the change?
First thing people will have to do is to set up the data collection. So starting to get the data in the tool. So it's simple as publishing one tag, really, at least for the page view, at least. And then from there, starting to mapping out what we used to track in Universal Analytics and try to figure out the new syntax for GA4. So this mapping is actually the opportunity also to redefine what is important to measure, what are different interactions that really matters, and then implement that. And then once we have the data in, people will have to figure out on how to report and use the data. So that's where you're gonna configure the tool, add the custom reports, build those dashboards in the Explorer tool, create your dashboards in Data Studio, or go through BigQuery if you want to combine the data with other sources and do more of a data work. But the first thing would be data collection first. Get the data in as soon as possible, and then figure out on how you will still have 1 year to actually make the move from one tool to the other. But at least you have this historical data being pulled in, and as you make this migration yourself.
Excellent, thank you, Ben. You rattled that off. I think it's fair to say that you've spent quite a bit of time over the last couple of months working through that process across many websites. So you've got a good understanding of that process. Great. So final question is closing remarks, and this is for each of you. So from your professional perspectives, what are the 2 or 3 most important points that you want everyone here to take away from this discussion today? And we'll start with you, Selena.
So from a strategic point of view, a lot of businesses need to start thinking about siloed approaches. This is very much needs to be a consumer first strategy for moving forwards. And that's what GA4 kind of empowers us and enables us as marketers to actually utilize and do. So I think that's probably the first one, which really does feed into, I guess, a comment I made earlier about as technicians ourselves, our mindset needs to completely change as well. You don't have SEOs doing SEOs, you don't have paid doing paid, CROs and all that kind of stuff. It's very much just a collaboration piece now. If we're doing all this work to push relevant audiences and knowing who our consumers are to our website, it's really about how are we letting them engage with us and we're providing the best experience. And that's always been the case, but now we actually have a data source to show us that level of engagement, which is really cool. And my final point would be more around performance reporting. So, as I mentioned before, attribution is going to change your results, and what you think are your best performing channels moving forward probably won't be. So it's really about, I guess, an internal culture shift and going, is the model we're using today still the correct model that we should be evaluating the performance of our partners or our marketing teams, or do we need to kind of reevaluate? So once we do have GA4 implemented, we can actually adjust the expectations for everyone internally.
Great, thank you, Selena. And Ben, the most important points for people to take away?
Learn about GA4, educate yourself, play with the tool, go in there, take the ownership back of your data, and understand of how it's going to work, how it's going to impact your team, all the changes that you will have to do from a reporting, dashboarding point of view, and start that journey of shifting your mind from session-centric to user-centric and have more of that holistic view. And then the second point is think bigger, since we have now access to the raw data through BigQuery. There are so many things that can be done and unlocked that now that we have this possibility of going to the cloud.
Excellent, thank you, Ben. And Alan, the points that you would like people to take away from today?
Yep, don't waste the opportunity to go beyond web and mobile. Explore ways to blend in your other first-party data from all your offline sources into GA4, so that you can build that rich 360-degree view of your customer for digital and marketing. That'd be my first point. My second is, while the clock is ticking, I still encourage you to invest the time up front to properly and thoroughly discover and define the customer data that's available across your business. And seek ways to bring it in, make it as intuitive for digital and marketing as possible. And the last point I want to make is, given GA4 is establishing your GCP footprint, starting with BigQuery, seek to learn more about how you can leverage the wider GCP ecosystem to drive even more value. And feel free to speak to one of the experts at Serving who can help you navigate, design, deploy, deliver your next cloud solution.
Excellent, thank you, everyone. So I'll get on to questions in a moment, but I guess from my perspective, just want to put a final thought in here that this is an opportunity for digital marketers. GA4, we've been using it now for, well, since it was released, so 2.5 years, and we were early adopters of the tool, implementing it early. and it's a very powerful tool. So it's a little bit scary when you go in because it's so different and the things that you're used to doing no longer work. But if you give it time, you will get a lot of value out of the tool. It will help you make better decisions. It will help you find richer insights. So I would encourage everyone just to embrace it. It is a good platform. So moving to questions. Thank you, everyone, by the way. Thank you to our speakers, some awesome insights there. And so everyone knows, if anyone does drop off, we're going to be sharing the video. We'll share the content that's been noted for tonight. And we will also be sharing contact details. So if you've got any questions around GA4 that we haven't addressed here and you want to pick up a conversation with me or pick up a conversation with Ben, you'll have my details. And the same on the Google Cloud side of things and the data integration side of things. Alan will be sharing his details so you can pick up those conversations with Alan. So over to questions. We've got a few here. The first one, Michelle, thank you for your question. So implementing GA Universal Analytics was simple as embedding code into GTM. Is the implementation of GA4 as simple as that, or does it require careful planning to map out the entire data layer? I'm going to go to Ben on that one first.
So to implement tags, including event tags, there is still the possibility of doing that through GTM. So in terms of implementation and how to deploy GA4 on your website, if you already have GTM, that would be pretty straightforward. Now, when it comes to mapping the events, assuming that your Universal Analytics setup was already good or covering everything you needed, then you can map for one-to-one. It's just that the syntax would be a bit different, and you have to think more of more about the event itself, where it used to be just category action label. Now you can go with more parameters and things. So it's really just the opportunity of, if you just want to do the duplication, it's quite straightforward, but you could go the extra step of redefining exactly what matters and what is important to measure on the website.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Hopefully that answers the question. Gisela has asked, how does the tracking of goals and implementation of tracking goals from GA Universal Analytics compare to the new event tracking? Is there still a way to pull data that says Facebook ads won't track for us? Track for us as e-commerce digital marketers. Sorry, a bit of a pig's ear. Do you want me to repeat?
I'm reading.
Oh, but that's for you, Ben. Sorry, I haven't. I didn't.
But
I didn't give that to anyone.
So, in terms of setup, so goals in GA4 are now events that you consider as a conversion. So it's a bit of a shift. But then, is there still a way to pull data that say Facebook ads? So, well, in GA4, you will be able to still see where the user were coming from. So you still have at the session level the source and the medium. So if you have Facebook campaigns running and you are providing source, medium, and campaign, you will still be able to report on the performance within GA4. Now, within the platform for Facebook, it's decorrelated, right? So you will have to implement your own Facebook tag to be able to report on e-commerce within Facebook. But yeah, I hope it answers the question.
Great, thank you very much. And we've got a question from Greg. Will we ever get back to accurate real-time data to the second, not the last minute aggregated? That's one question. Second part of that is it a combo of tag manager, event, and report setup in GA4 or Data Studio? Or am I missing something?
So
that's probably one for you again, Ben. Most of these, I think, are right in your in your area.
So real time No, I don't think they will upgrade or change the way real-time is working at the moment in GA4. One thing you could do though is there is this debug view. So in the configure section of GA4, there is this debug view where if you were to launch GTM in a debug in the preview modes, you will be able to see as you do the actions on your website, you could see the events coming in. So if it's for debugging the implementation, you still have this debug view. If it's to report on what's happening on your website real time, it's going to be as it is right now. I don't think they're going to change that.
Okay.
And
Can
then
I add another aspect? Can I add one more aspect to that?
Yes, please do.
Because your data is now flowing unsampled. I'm reading the question in a slightly different angle. Unsampled into BigQuery, which sits a little outside of GA4 interface, you will have to the second all the data. None of it's aggregated. I guess it's not sampled anymore. So you will have access to granular data. It may not be real time. I think it's on a schedule, maybe 5 to 15 minutes or so, but all the data is there. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, excellent. And I think I did read that there are some enhancements coming to some of the related reports that Ben was just mentioning. So there is one other question here, which is should we use both tools, Universal Analytics and GA4, at the same time? When will we be able to completely switch off Google, switch to Google Analytics 4? Benoit, do you want to answer that one again?
Yeah, well, it's a journey. So start with the dual tagging. As soon as possible, get the data in GA4, start exploring that, and then you have the full year to move to GA4. So that's where you're going to train your team. That's where you're going to create the equivalence of your dashboard, of your reports and things, and then you would have to move to GA4 by July next year anyway. So it's just the question of when do you want to shift all your reporting from UA to GA4 and how long it's going to take the team to make that shift. So I don't think you will be able to go straight into GA4 and use it as it is right now. It's going to take a few months for you and your team to fully embrace the new tool.
Yeah. Go ahead, Alan.
Oh, I was just going to add to this that the dangers of running them side by side, which you may do for some time, but don't spend the time trying to get them to reconcile. Yeah, they operate in very different ways. We heard, Selena talk about different attribution models. You're going to have to calculate your conversion metrics and your bounce rates. So don't bother trying to reconcile them. They're tracking in different ways and they're doing different things. So run them side by side. That's fine. Yeah, but don't waste your time trying to look at it both at the same time as well.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Alan. And I think a few people mentioned along the way about stakeholder engagement and stakeholder management. That's conversations that we're already seeing. So depending on the sector the business is in, how important their website data is to them in terms of particularly at a senior management level, those conversations are already starting because we know we are not going to get the same data out of the two different platforms. So that needs to be carefully thought out. Who's getting access to the data? How important is that data to someone in the C-suite or one of their company managers? And then start having that conversation just to make sure that they're expecting a change and they understand the change. And if you take them on that journey, your life will be a hell of a lot easier. So there is one more question. We're going to wrap it up on this one. What is the role of digital strategists now informing how an organization might move to GA4? So what can that sounds like it's one for you, Selena. What can a digital strategist do to inform how an organization may move to GA4?
Yeah, so that's quite a big question to ask. I think a lot of it is evaluating what you're doing today. So do you actually understand who your consumers are? There's a lot of organizations out there who invest in consumer research and those kind of things, but it's really, do you actually know who those people are? And is the work that you're doing, the strategies that you have and the messaging and all those kind of different components, are they actually providing the right answers to those consumers? And I think that's kind of the first point from a strategic point of view, which will inform essentially how you should be working with GA4, because it can kind of set up, when we're thinking about funnels and all that, and those kind of components and the different events that you set up, that will all be kind of led by that kind of thinking. Like I mentioned around performance reporting as well. I remember a couple of years back, I was working with a fairly large e-com brand, Australia, New Zealand, and internally they could not get the board of that particular brand to get off last non-direct attribution. And that's kind of where they needed to go as a company, because they were spending about, I think it was about $1 million a month in ad spend alone, but they couldn't get them off that. And that's kind of what I was talking about before, where it's a cultural shift that's needed. So if internally, within UA now, even today, you can do the comparison tool and figure out what actual model makes more sense to your particular business model. So if you have a longer purchase cycle, typically the longer like a time decay might work well if you don't want to do data driven for whatever reason. Then that way you can start to kind of plan for that with GA4. And exactly like Alan mentioned, it's not a one-for-one when you're doing UA versus GA4. So using those comparisons is really interesting if you are running both at once, because it can help inform internally how you actually have, how you're reporting your performance, but as well as how you've actually got GA4 set up.
Awesome. That's a very thorough answer. Thank you, Selena. So we're going to wrap this up now. Thank you for everyone for attending and spending your Thursday evening with us. It's we're very lucky to have you join us. We hope you got good value out of this. And if you do have questions, please reach out to me. If I'm not the right person to speak to, I will route you through to the correct person. But as I said, this is an opportunity, and I encourage everyone to start doing that migration sooner rather than later, so you don't get caught up in that last minute rush and end up with no analytics at all. So thank you, everyone. Have a good evening, and see you at the next one. Bye, everyone.